Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Monday, August the 19th, 2019. This evening we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Village Clerk Pramod Shah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Roberts?
Here.
Trustee Sutker?
Here.
Trustee Ulrich?
Here.
Trustee Bromberg is absent today. Trustee Klein?
Here.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Here we have a quorum. I would like to take just one moment to introduce a couple people this evening. We have a couple guests. An old friend, a graduate of Niles West High School, Melinda Lopin. Melinda, thank you. And all the way from Morocco, Layla Marhom. Layla, would you stand for just a second? Thank you for coming. Layla is a guest of Melinda's, and she wanted to see democracy in action. So she's come to the meeting this evening. We will do our best to give that to you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Ulrich. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts?
Aye.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Ulrich?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda and the feature for this evening is a report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Dusen and Village Board. Good evening, everyone. Item A this evening is regarding a public hearing for the proposed Oakton Street and Niles Avenue TIF district, and Leslie Murphy and Lynn Becker, who lead our economic development team, will be conducting this public hearing for us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Village Trustees, and Village Clerk. In accordance with the Illinois TIF statute, I'd like to convene the public hearing tonight as required by the State of Illinois Tax Increment Allocation Redevelopment Act to consider the establishment of the proposed Oakton Street, Niles Avenue TIF district in downtown Skokie. The proposed new Oakton Niles TIF district, as it is commonly known at this point, is designed to help facilitate several new development projects within, adjacent to, and proximate to the Illinois Science and Technology Park. We are contemplating a development of a hotel and conference center proposal for the properties located at 4900, 4930 Oakton Street, the redevelopment of 8030 Lamont Avenue, which is currently within the Illinois Science and Technology Park, a construction of a new public-private parking garage, the redevelopment of Oakton Terrace, which is the roadway that actually runs parallel to the Oakton Street parcels and just south of the 8030 Lamont parcel, to further accommodate the above described uses and a potential future mixed-use development or series of developments along Oakton Street. Establishment of the new 6.25 acre Oakton Niles TIF district will also involve incorporating several parcels that are currently within the Downtown Science and Technology Park TIF district, which was established in 2005 and is due to terminate in 2029. We will also be requiring a minor amendment ordinance to be adopted along with 3 ordinances that would establish the new TIF district following 14 to 90 days following the night of this public hearing. As is mandated by Illinois TIF law, the village has undertaken a TIF qualification designation report for the area and the proposed boundary area, as we'll show you tonight during the presentation. We've also drafted a TIF redevelopment plan and project, which further outlines the goals and objectives for the TIF district. The consulting firm of Kane McKenna and Associates, we have here tonight the senior VP of Kane McKenna, Bob Richlicki. They were retained to assist the village in this process. Drafts of the redevelopment plan and project have been on file with the village clerk's office since June 7th, 2019. The overall report, the qualification report, details the conditions of the area and concludes that the area qualifies as a conservation area as defined under the Illinois TIF law. At the June 17th, 2019 Skokie Board of Trustees meeting, the mayor and trustees approved a resolution which proposed the Oakton Street Niles Avenue redevelopment plan and project, convened a joint review board, and set the date for the required public hearing, which is tonight. This resolution stipulated 2 important dates and committed the village to certain actions and timeframes relative to those dates. The first date was for the Joint Review Board, or the JRB, to meet on July 11th, 2019, to review the proposed TIF plan, qualification report, boundary area, and the draft ordinances related to the adoption of the proposed TIF district, as well as the use of TIF financing to achieve the goals represented in the plan. The Joint Review Board consists of representatives of the Village of Skokie, School Districts 69 and 219, the Skokie Park District, Cook County, Niles Township, the Skokie Library District, Oakton Community College, and an at-large public member. This group convenes annually to discuss the status and the effectiveness of all of the TIF districts within the village. So we see this group pretty regularly. But they were convened for the purposes of establishing this new TIF district in July. Following a detailed presentation by village staff and representatives of Kane McKenna, the Joint Review Board submitted an advisory, unanimous recommendation approving the TIF district by a vote of 8 ayes, no nays, and no abstentions. The second stipulated date was for the public hearing to be conducted, as we're doing right now. Notices of the public hearing were published in 2 editions of the Skokie Review and sent by certified mail to all affected taxing districts and property owners within the entire TIF district. Furthermore, approximately 750 notices were sent to all residents living within 750 feet of the proposed boundary area, all in compliance with the TIF law. All interested parties have been invited to file written objections with the village clerk's office or to be heard orally tonight at this public hearing. Once the public hearing is completed, the village can adopt the necessary ordinances, approving the new TIF district and amending the existing Downtown and Science and Technology TIF district, as I mentioned, within 14 to 90 days. In addition to the required TIF statute mandated requirements, the village also hosted a public open house on August 13, 2019, about a week ago, for information on the proposed TIF district, as well as to provide updates and celebrate the projects that are already underway in the Downtown Science and Technology TIF district. Village staff estimates that approximately 350 enthusiastic guests, including residents, business owners, and other stakeholders, attended the open house, and it was deemed to be a very open night where people could ask any questions they wanted of the existing development teams, the proposed development teams, and we had about 12 members of staff there, I think, at any given time. So we were very pleased with the results. As the village has often done in the past, staff determined that the upcoming required proposed amendment to the Downtown Science and Technology TIF district will also include or a removal of certain properties that have already developed since the beginning of the downtown TIF district. And during the course of the amendment, we'll be releasing 8 properties that have already been developed as part of the streetscape residential development, highly valued properties, releasing the accessible EAV to all taxing jurisdictions of these highly valued areas for the next TIF year, or next tax year. Additionally, the village is currently completing an intergovernmental agreement with School District 69, which is designed to mitigate any impact of the proposed new TIF district. So we begin the public hearing with a staff presentation, followed by questions and answers from the board, and finally, questions and comments from the public. And we appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. And I'm here to introduce my colleague, Len Becker. He's going to produce the more interesting part of the presentation tonight.
Picture time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Hopefully the next few slides, I will not bore you, but I think it's important to set the stage for what this new TIF entails and why it's so important and pivotal at a very interesting time in downtown Skokie. So a couple of pictures from the open house that we had last Tuesday. Won't beleaguer that. This is the area of the new TIF. Later, there will be a map showing the existing TIF and how the proposed TIF fits into the geographic footprint. This area, just to orient everybody, where the hand is the Casa Elegante space on the southeast corner of Niles and Oakton Avenue. The northeast corner, this building right here is the Sanford Brown building, and the proposed TIF goes all the way to the Walgreens parking lot to the easternmost terminus on the north side of Oakton. So this is Walgreens Medical Clinic. This is the space currently occupied by Annie's, mostly vacant. This is the 8030 building here. And then this area as part of the TIF is actually just a greenfield as part of the Illinois Science and Technology Park and its site for the future parking garage. So part of the rationale, as Leslie mentioned, is vested in state TIF law. There's various requirements that are needed, but the village has judiciously, since 1990, recognized the TIF tool and what it is and how that could spur development not only in downtown, but there have been other TIF districts throughout the span of this program throughout the village. But really looking at underutilized vacant properties, and the big key is the but for. So as these properties are considered to be developed by the private sector, there needs to be a but for this ability to finance these projects. Otherwise, they quite frankly just would not be feasible. This chart represents the projects that we know. There are 4 PIN numbers or parcel numbers, which include the Sanford Brown building all the way to Annie's, the field which we'll talk about for the parking garage, and the 8030 Lamont building. In the last 10 years, these properties have declined by 45% in equalized assessed valuation. This is according to Cook County. Kane McKenna validated this. So this is front and center on why this area is needing a TIF. This chart just basically gives you the conceptual idea of what a TIF is. The orange line is just a number. Let's say it's $100 million, and that's the increment. It's called the base increment. All of the taxing jurisdictions will continue to collect the base increment regardless of what happens. If the TIF does not happen, that increment can fall, as we just saw on the previous slide, by 45% for those 4 properties. In theory, the TIF mechanism, the performance of the increased evaluation by development, occupancy, private sector investment, public sector investment, should increase over time. So for example, again, real life, the existing Downtown Science and Technology TIF district in 2005 had an equalized assessed valuation of just over $42 million. In 2017, that number is at $67.4 million. At the end of this TIF district, which is in 2028, taxes will be payable in 2029, you will see that this number is about double of what it was in 2005. It's also important to recognize that this equalized assessed valuation number of $81.1 million does not contemplate any additional buildings at the Science and Tech Park. So this is as it is. Two outstanding village bond issuances for the Illinois Science and Technology Park parking garage, as well as the Yellow Line CTA station, are being covered by the TIF increment that is being generated. And the schools, per state TIF law, are reimbursed on a per capita basis. When we look at all of those projects that are TIF assisted, we set aside 40% for those residential projects that will or could be generating pupils, not only in District 69, but also District 219. And as Leslie mentioned, we are in formulating an intergovernmental agreement with District 69. So some of the qualification factors as a conservation area, all of the buildings are over 35 years. The threshold is 50%. We will exceed that. We also have 7 of 13 qualifying factors, which are these things. So the maximum number of qualifying factors are 13. The minimum needed are 3. And Kane McKenna determined easily there are 7 in this proposed TIF district. Again, it's 6.25 acres. It's very small. So these are some of the vacancy factors at the various buildings as part of the new TIF district, and most of these encompass those projects that I just articulated. So again, some of the other qualifying factors include a decline in equalized assessed valuation for 3 of the past 5 years, that the increased EAV is declining at an annual rate less than the CPI. There's all sorts of financial factors, but again, this area absolutely qualifies. We have a proposed TIF budget. By law, we are required to create a budget. This is, again, proposed. We don't know what we don't know. But I'd like to highlight, I know this slide might be a little hard to read, but really the top 4 lines, site assembly, land acquisition, site preparation, demolition, remediation, rehabilitation of existing structures, those are really the key points here. Oakton Terrace was mentioned. I'll show you a graphic of what is entailed there. So there's a lot of public improvements that go into this equation, into this budget, that are extraordinarily expensive and would not be financially feasible for private sector investment without TIF assistance. So this is the current, down here where the hand is the proposed TIF district, again, 6.25 acres. The existing area outlined in black is the current Downtown Science and Technology TIF district, which expires in 2028, taxes paid 2029. That's that $81.1 million that I mentioned earlier that will be coming back on the payroll or for the taxing jurisdictions. Leslie mentioned the Floral Avenue properties. So the streetscape development, there are 8 properties on the east side of Floral Avenue recently completed the end of last year. And the village, as part of this amendment, we are taking those 8 properties out of the current Downtown Science and Technology TIF district and giving those back to the taxing jurisdiction so they are able to begin collecting property taxes. About 3 of the homes are currently assessed. We expect the county will get those all within the next year, and those are significantly valuable properties. So again, based on our philosophy, we try to bring projects and properties back as soon as we can. So just a quick recap. Over the last 10 years, since 2005, you could see some of the major milestones within the TIF district, within the Downtown Science and Tech TIF district. 2019 really pivots us to a new opportunity, an additional opportunity. You could see $23.1 million was released, again, as part of our philosophy with TIFs. We have a streetscape project of $3.5 million. I'm not going to read all of these. In 2013, adding an additional $13.5 million in 2014 for a lot of the residential projects that came online downtown, predominantly condominium projects. The Floral Avenue project I mentioned, 8,000 North across the street. American Landmark Properties purchasing the Tech Park in January of 17. Ignite Esports and Gaming Center. We held our open house there, and then looking forward to the future. So now we get into the before and afters. I always have trouble with this mouse. There we go. Okay, so right now this is what 4930 Oakton looks like. Been vacant since 2014. It's a former Sanford Brown school. This is the proposed Homewood Suites by Hilton. I'm going to go into the project details, but basically this is the northeast corner of Niles Avenue and Oakton Street. The existing Sanford Brown building starts about here. This is a Casa Elegante building, future parking garage. This is not a rendering. This is just a placeholder of where the parking garage, and I'll show you a better slide here in a minute. So here's what the project means. This hotel opportunity, it's been vetted by 2 hotel consulting firms that said that unilaterally state that the hotel is needed. This is a product that does not exist in Skokie. It is a pivotal anchor for the tech park. It is adjacent to the CTA Yellow Line station. It will provide 10,000 square feet of meeting space, conference space, a rooftop pub and restaurant open to the public with its own entry point, ground floor retail, restaurant uses, entertainment uses, fully amenitized hotel for their guests, including pool, business center, etc. The building here is 8030 Lamont. It did look like that. It is almost looking like the next slide I'm about to show everybody. But really what's important about this slide, we had mentioned Oakton Terrace, which is basically along this fence line. Without Oakton Terrace getting approved, it's very costly. The hotel will not happen, 8030 Lamont will not happen, and the parking garage will not happen. So I will tell you that moving utility poles and high power transformers, fiber optic cable, bringing this up to grade is very expensive. So earlier when I pointed out the budget and the but for, this is probably the most in front of your face example of why TIF is needed here. So this is what 8030 Lamont almost looks like. This is the exterior renovation only, does not include the mechanicals or any of the interior work, which is very expensive, especially when you look at wet lab space. This exterior should be completed in the fall. This is the opportunity at 8030 Lamont. The Illinois Science and Technology Park is 100% full. There is no room for any companies that would like to locate to the tech park or companies that are at the tech park to expand. This building is critical to continue the momentum at the tech park. There's also one firm that's contemplating buying the entire building and bringing 450 jobs to the tech park as a corporate headquarters relocation. Even if that does not happen, There's a lot of velocity in the marketplace for the Illinois Science and Technology Park. I can go on and on about location, proximity to the yellow line, halfway between Lake County's big bio, pharma, industry, the research activities that are taking place at the various universities in Chicago. It's just an incredible opportunity. So this is why these pieces fit so well together and they're so critically important. In addition, we talk about the public infrastructure. The village has determined for years that there's a need for additional public parking to serve this area of downtown. We estimate that between 125 to about 175, I just split the difference, of new public parking spaces are needed in a new garage. This garage does contemplate those public parking spaces. It also accommodates the parking for the hotel, for the guests of the hotel, for events at the hotel, as well as employees that will be housed at 8030 Lamont, as well as employees that would come in future phases of expansion at the technology park. It also looks at improvements in addition to Oakton Terrace, Lamont Avenue at some point in the future to create the ingress and egress and fully built out plan for the tech park and the movement of mobility, not only cars, but bicycles, pedestrians, et cetera. So we looked at, as part of the exercise, earlier I mentioned 45% decline in the equalized assessed valuation for those 4 projects that are a known entity. We looked at the entire TIF district proposed of 6.25 acres, and that EAV has declined by almost 30%. So again, it's just a reinforcing factor. Looking at the purple line, you see in 2018 through 2023. So if the hotel, 8030 Lamont, and the parking garage get built, we think they'll be on the tax rolls and at least mostly stabilized, meaning that the assessor is counting the full value of those properties. Just on those properties alone, we look at a 747% increase in EAV on those properties, not including anything else that may happen in the proposed TIF district. And then 5 years later, we expect another 13% bump. Again, just those projects. So again, I talked a little bit earlier about our philosophy. I think it's important to note that the village has a long-standing track record of trying to terminate pieces of TIF districts and TIF districts as they stand as early as possible. That's been proven at the Village Crossing TIF district. It's been proven prior at the Church Avenue TIF district. We have continued to pull properties out of the downtown TIF district. I just indicated the Floral Avenue properties. We'll continue to look at that every year. We're proactively meeting with the school districts, and we always seek to leverage as much private sector money as we possibly can to maximize the ability to utilize TIF funds and have the biggest impact for the community. So again, the timeline in closing, and before I turn it over to the mayor for further questions, I just want to thank everyone again for their interest, for attending, and we look forward to working with our partners for the next chapter. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. First, I would like to take the opportunity to, as a matter of professional courtesy, to introduce Joanne Marston, who is the Vice President of District 69. The district does have a statement it would like to make, so Madam Vice President, or Madam President with President out of town.
With President in Hawaii. Otherwise, we would have called him back. All right, my name is Joanne Marsden, and I'm Vice President of the Skokie District 69 School Board. and I'm going to read a statement today. As members of the District 69 Board of Education, we are stewards of public tax dollars and always look to act in the best interests of our taxpayers. Earlier this year, we were informed that the Village of Skokie is proposing a new TIF district intended to stimulate economic development within the areas of downtown Skokie. We are excited by the opportunity for growth in our community and supportive of the property development plans, which include the parking garage, hotel, and completion of Building J at the Tech Park. However, our board raised several concerns about the financial impact the establishment of a third TIF district would have on taxpayers in the District 69 attendance area and our schools over the long term. We asked the village to consider other mechanisms available to them, which would more equitably share the costs across the entire village and have less impact on our schools. The Board of Education is grateful for the constructive and collaborative dialogue between the village and the school district. Through these conversations, the village staff has assured the district that establishing a new TIF is the only viable option, and this option was selected after exhausting all other possible mechanisms. During these conversations, the school district and Village of Skokie have established a mutually beneficial framework for an intergovernmental agreement that is designed to mitigate some of the potential negative impacts of the TIF district on School District 69. We look forward to finalizing the IGA and having it approved by the Board of Education and the Village Board. On July 11th, District 69 participated in the Joint Review Board with the other impacted taxing bodies, including District 219, Skokie Public Library, Skokie Park District, Niles Township Government, and Oakton Community College, and concurred with the rest of the JRB that the identified area met the criteria to qualify as a TIF district. We are thankful to the Village of Skokie for their open communication and collaboration on this complex business development issue and their efforts to mitigate the economic burden on District 69 and our taxpayers, as well as to minimize the impact on students. We look forward to continuing our collaboration moving forward.
Thank you.
No?
And I would like to introduce Margaret Clausen, the Superintendent of District 69. And I might point out, she's one hell of a tough negotiator. First of all, I will ask the village board if they have any comment, and then open it to any citizen. No, there's no vote tonight.
Correct. Okay.
No. Does any member of the board have any questions this evening? Let me start over here. Trustee Sucker.
So, Len, I just wanted to get a few more details about the two feasibility studies, because I know you said that they showed a need. And I know one of the needs is for the Illinois Science and Technology Park, but can you elaborate a little bit on what they found to be the other needs for a hotel in this area?
Sure. So we had two feasibility studies done. One was about 2 years ago, and that basically showed an overall need for additional product in the North Shore submarket as determined by hotel consultants. And then as we got further into the process with the proposed developer of the Homewood Suites Hotel, we commissioned a study with HVS, which is the top consulting firm based in Chicago. And they did a real deep dive into the marketplace. And just a couple of the key takeaways. The extended stay product, those business travelers that are here for a week, had the highest occupancy rates in the market, as well as the highest what's called ADR, average daily rate. So looking at all the hotels, they determined that in the marketplace, which basically goes from the Chicago border north all the way into central Lake County, there was a dearth of this product. Especially as you get closer into the city, there's virtually none of this product. So with access to the Yellow Line station, with what they've seen with the corporate headquarters that are not only up in Lake County, but also have migrated into the city, that this was a great midway point. It's a new hotel, and quite frankly, they said that many of the hotels in this submarket are dated and are becoming functionally obsolete. So as a brand matures, there are mandates for that product to reinvest in the hotel to keep it up to brand standards. And as buildings become older and older, that becomes more and more difficult to do. So there were numerous factors that came into play, but it was a very strong recommendation, not just for the tech park, not just for event space for the community in the region, but also those opportunities to bring new people to downtown Skokie. And based on very conservative numbers, without any events, we're looking at 40,000 additional people to downtown Skokie every year. Again, that's the lowest, most conservative estimate.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question, is that okay?
Sure.
So, in terms of releasing properties off the original TIF, the 2005 TIF, so some of those released properties helped the school district, correct?
Yes.
And are you saying that that it was 23.1 million that was released on here?
So the point here in 2005, when the downtown TIF district was established in 1990, this was 15 years later. So at that time, the village took the existing boundaries and took out most of the properties that had been redeveloped via residential and mixed
So
use.
this was in 2005, the 23?
Exactly.
So what's been released since 2005?
Well, so then in 2014, the downtown TIF district terminated. So
Okay.
all of the remaining property that hadn't already been taken out in 2005 was then deemed to be new property, so everyone was able to access that additional 13.5 million. So if you add the 13.5 then in the 23.1, that was the benefit of the downtown TIF district in terms of incremental EAV. So everyone was able to then access that for their own purposes. So so then what we're planning to do now with another amendment to the downtown science and technology TIF district, we're taking out several properties that have already been developed and are going to be made available to all of the overlapping taxing districts way sooner than 2029.
So do we know over the years how releasing these properties from the TIF has helped District 69, the school district? What does that translate into?
Well, we'd have to look at to see whether or not, whatever their budget was at that time when in 2014, that's when we terminated the TIF district. The next year is when all the overlapping taxing districts had that added EAV. So we'd have to look to 69 and find out exactly what the benefit was.
And we can do some math. When we look at the EAV, there's a formula, and then every year the tax rates change. I think the last year 69 was 48%-ish of the tax. But anyway, we have those numbers, and we could matriculate that out and get an idea.
And help tell the story
Yeah.
of what the benefits have been over time.
And we have a lot more of the background data. It's just for the sake of this presentation, we really wanted to focus on the new TIF. But we have been very judicious about pulling properties out.
Better than any towns that I know of in the area. So,
Okay.
but we can get that information, and I
Yes.
think it would be helpful
Yeah.
to know that for your own constituents
I would
as
appreciate
well as-
knowing that.
Okay, yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
do that.
We have it, my business manager's not here though, he's got the dollars.
Yes.
As soon
Justin
as
has-
as
He
soon as
knows.
without the business
Okay.
manager, I'm gonna say the wrong numbers.
Okay,
We don't have it.
all right,
But it's been a positive.
okay, thank you.
Trustee Roberts.
Would you mind putting up the proposed budget? Because I'm pleased to hear the statement from District 69. I've talked to a lot of the residents in that district, both informally and at the open house, and I know that when you freeze property taxes at this incremental level, that the most impacted are the school districts. which collect about 70% of, anywhere in town, any parcel, about 70% of your property taxes goes to schools. So the bulk of it goes to the elementary school, with District 219 taking, so obviously they're the ones that are impacted the most. But what I'm proud of is that we as a village board and as a village manager has made a commitment to the school district over the years to help in any way we can while we do the stimulus. And I'm sure that John could comment further, but helping with repairs to the schools while it was in the TIF district, to helping with the cost of police officers, releasing pieces of property. So this is not locking up these properties for 23 years and not giving any of the incremental property tax increases from these beautiful developments back to the schools. We've been very conscious, and we have that commitment to the school district. We're going to have an intergovernmental agreement. So I think we've showed our good faith, I hope, to you, that we will work with you in the future. But just to zero in a little bit more on, can you explain the line item for the school district reimbursement? And is that for increased children, which there really will not be any? This is a hotel and a business development. It's not a condo, it's not doing increase any school children. What is this $300,000 targeted at?
So this is a common line item that is in virtually all of our TIF plans and has been since I believe we scheduled the original TIF district in the downtown. It basically does represent an amount that is estimated or allocated for that purpose. If there is going to be a per capita reimbursement as a result of any anticipated children that are produced as a result of any projects within the TIF, and recall, we have several other properties east of the hotel that may go mixed use. So there may be some residential along Oakton Street, and so we are basically anticipating that if there are, then we can point to this part of the budget, and you've agreed to that these line items are reasonable ways in which to spend the TIF money. So it also allows for, if there are any other needs that the school district, whether it's 219 or Oakton Community College or 69, if they have expressed a need, and because of projects that have been implemented within the TIF district, they can appeal to the village as well for any amount of improvement costs. So it's basically it's not a set aside, but it's an understanding that there may be costs that the school districts need to request for reimbursement.
And part of the IGA is that there will be annual meetings between District 69 and the village to discuss.
Those are apart from the annual joint review board meeting.
Right.
Those will be separate to discuss just how the TIF has been doing and what needs are being undertaken or identified from the school district standpoint. So we have an ongoing dialogue, and it's not something that we just have to wait until there's a loss or some sort of misunderstanding. We're meeting every year to discuss those matters.
And just to quantify a little bit, in your memo, in terms of the 9 properties on the east side of Floral, am I correct? It could result in about $82,000 more per year for District 69.
Yes.
And over the next 9 years, in other words, if we did not release those from the TIF for the next 9 years, we could keep that money in the TIF fund.
Yes.
But we're going to release it, so next year there'd be $82,000. So over the next 9 years, it would be $730,000 just for those 9 properties. And what was gratifying at the open house, we have 3 or 4 beautiful developments going on. Lincoln Avenue, over by the bicycle track, or walking path along Skokie Boulevard. So all these new residential areas are going to increase in value in their EAVs, which will also go to our schools.
Okay. I'd like to invite anybody from the public who would like to comment If you don't mind, please step to the microphone and give us your name and your address, please. We would appreciate it.
Hello, good evening. My name is Catherine Miskell. I'm at 4537 Cleveland, so I'm a District 69 homeowner. I just have a couple of comments here. According to the Cook County Clerk's website, Skokie residents can pay between 8.3% and 12.4% local tax rate based on the school district in which you reside. District 69 pays the highest, which, with my house at 12.29%. And so with these new developments, I feel like there's an opportunity to drive down that tax rate so that District 69 taxpayers can be a little bit more on the same level with the rest of Skokie. And so my question is, while I'm not opposed to the development, what other vehicles has the village considered in addition to the TIF in order to help the taxpayers, number one. And then number two, it just seems a little unfair to me that District 69 residents are being asked to subsidize developments that would benefit all of Skokie. So I just need we need a little relief here in District 69 for our tax rates. I did a little research and found that for properties of the same assessed value, same size, we pay an average of $2,000 more because of the higher tax rates. And so we need some relief there.
Sure. John, if you want to address the alternative ideas that we looked at.
I sure will. And I'm also going to ask Lynn Becker to join me in responding to that. So the village has been diligent in looking at different options for...
Wait, just 1 second. Ms. Miskell, I don't mean to interrupt.
No.
If I could, how do you spell your last name?
It's M-I-S-K-E-L-L.
Ah. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No problem. And so we have been diligent looking at other options other than TIF districts. And so the village has a history of opening TIF districts and a few occasions in town. I think Fairview School District is a good example. We had a large employer that closed where Village Crossing is today. And we really increased the assessed value within that school district after the TIF district was created. And then we closed it early. By statute, TIFs are allowed to be 23 years. And around the 13-year mark, we were able to close that TIF district years ago. And I think the Desiree is also a good example of a TIF district. I've been with the village for 15 years, and I was never able to eat at the Desiree. It was vacant my whole tenure. And so it was an outdated building. The second story had windows that were partially askew, and they had air conditioning units that were sticking out of the windows, but the restrooms were in the basement. And the private sector for years and years didn't do anything with that property. And so the village stepped in and acquired the property and then was able to attract a developer, and eventually there will be a $65 million investment on that property, which will generate $875,000 annually in property taxes, which of that 49% will go to District 69. So for the village's economic development program to be able to generate that kind of private investment is a very helpful way for us to help the school districts and increase the vibrancy of our downtown, as well as to increase the value of the properties. Now, there's very few economic development tools other than a TIF district that can generate that kind of private investment. And so Lynn and Leslie looked at a number of options. And Lynn, if you would walk through a couple of those and demonstrate why they were not feasible for this solution.
Sure. So looking at the budget here, you can see some of these estimated costs. The overall budget of $41 million just for this 6.25 acre proposed TIF district. Like John said, TIF is literally the only large-scale tool available in the state of Illinois for municipalities to spur significant investment and economic development, capital investment, jobs. That's really what it's all about, and how that transcends into the school district. So we looked at things like a special service area. Special service area is a secondary property tax that's levied on properties within a specific geographic area. There is, in a 6.25 acre area, it's not even a rounding error on what that would generate. So at the scale of projects, we're looking at, between the hotel, 8030 Lamont, and the parking garage, at least $125 million of private investment. And there's just no economic way that any of the other tools, SSA, business improvement, business districts, they will just not generate enough money, not even close. So.
The other option that we looked at was sales tax incentives, and
Yeah.
the amount of sales tax or other taxes that are generated other than property taxes do not substantiate the private investment of 36 million for the hotel.
And sales taxes are very fluid. They're not predictable. And, beyond just the Amazon effect, people, that go out to eat, that's discretionary. If the economy slows down, those get hit. So it's very difficult, if not impossible, to finance any project predicated on sales tax unless there's a guarantee involved, which there are no guarantees.
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Bear with me for a moment because I've been thinking about this a lot. Kenneth Park, 9050 Ewing, longtime resident. My grandparents moved into Skokie in 1919, been around for a while. Greetings to the mayor and the board, village manager. I'm an independent construction manager. I'm not affiliated with any of these projects, but I was the construction manager for the CARE animal shelter on Main and Niles Center. I've watched downtown Skokie struggle to renew itself ever since they opened Old Orchard Mall. Some of us remember that. I think the village staff, community development, village economic development team are showing great progress recently with many exciting projects. There have really been some major changes. Illinois Scientific Technology Park is booming. Proposed projects around it help to enhance and expand it further, the hotel, the parking structure. The proposed new Oakton Street, Niles Avenue, TIF district is a major leap forward for the downtown and for all of Skokie. I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
That's P-A-R-K.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for letting us comment. I wanted to follow up on, my name is Jan Pels. I live at 8335 Kenneth, 8335. And I want to follow up on the first commenter's question. So our taxes have gone way up, and it was primarily a referendum for the schools to supplement them to help with their budget. So if these TIF properties have been released and their taxes are now available to use for the schools, why are our tax rates for the school on our tax bill not coming back down to where they were before we had the referendum to help the schools, apparently because there wasn't enough money because of the TIF? That's my question.
Well, it wasn't because of the TIF. Bear in mind, the properties that we're talking about generate almost no property tax as they exist. If you take Sanford Brown, I believe generates about $30,000 total in property tax divided by the different bodies. I call it J Building. Mr. Park has been here long enough. He may remember, it was at 8040 Lamont is the new address, I guess. That was the old Vivarian for G.D. Searle. It produces no property tax. Len put up the walkway where the fence was. That certainly produces no property tax. The point before us is, but for, if we can do nothing, just let things sit as they are, do nothing, and we will get nothing. We tried that approach. I forget the exact year, but I believe it was 2010. We were in the recession. We purchased the old Desiree property with the idea that when the recession comes to an end, this will be a prime piece of property and it'll be purchased. It wasn't. We went out and talked to developers. Every developer said, we'd be interested, except we need public investment. We saw it work. We did invest in 2005 when the old Pharmacia closed up, and this is the G.D. Searle property. We came to a bargain with American Landmark's predecessor. They invest $150 million in the project. The village invested $10 million, and we've invested, we have money from the state of Illinois as well. It's now 100% leased. Those jobs are all Skokie jobs, and they're very well-paying science jobs. We're now talking about the need to create another 140,000 square feet. I guess it's 146,000 technically. We may get a single occupier. But regardless of that, we have in the park 20 companies, many of whom will be looking to expand, and they're either going to expand within the park. Currently, we have no space, or they're going to move. One company just got a $67 million investment from a private investment company, Lanzatech. You all may have heard of Lanzatech. It's a remarkable company. It reuses and recycles carbon. They just signed a contract about a year ago with Virgin Air, and they're supplying that airline with all of its fuel. They have a major project in China. Every time I hear a certain person talk about China and tariffs, I get a stomach ache because this isn't doing us any good. My point is we're attracting international companies. And the original vision of the park was we would attract these companies from around the world, and we would expand, which is what American Landmarks is now talking about, but also we would have a hotel. All of these companies, Lanzatech, just as an example, is from across the world. They relocated from across the world to Skokie because of our vision on the tech park. They need a place where they can hold meetings as well as put up people from China, from Germany, and other places around the globe. That is what has stimulated our interest in this. Our expectation is that once this project is completed, you will begin to see the taxes going down. If we don't do something, there is one assurance: they're not going down.
Mayor Van Dusen, I think my question was related to the 2014 properties from the old TIF that got
Right.
released. So where is that tax revenue going, and why, again, do the residents of District 69 still have these higher tax rates when it was apparently a successful TIF, and you now have properties that are contributing taxes? Thank you.
I think it's a good question, and basically our work's not complete. The need to continue to grow the assessed value within the community, but also specifically within District 69, is important. It costs X dollars a year to educate a student. And so as District 69 manages their operations and that responsibility and strive to provide top-notch education, there needs to be a significant tax base in order to make the taxes not overly burdensome. And so part of the village's job, and we take it very seriously with our economic development team, is to grow the assessed value and to have an even more vibrant community in downtown. And so what we're working to do is to have an additional 40,000 people staying at a hotel. They're going to be frequently the businesses in downtown Skokie, the restaurants in downtown Skokie, the various establishments, the downtown theater, the residents of 8000 North, as well as all the other residential developments, will become part of the downtown. And so not just as the TIF investing in these specific properties, there's a ripple effect into other businesses benefiting and other property values perhaps going up. But our job is to make the community vibrant, even more vibrant, and then to grow that assessed value. And this is one of the best ways for us to do it at this point. The downtown train station was a fantastic investment. The number of people that use that day in and day out to either arrive to town or to leave town and come back really adds to the vitality and vibrancy of our downtown. And so that train station wouldn't have happened without the TIF district a few years back. And so we leveraged 50% of that cost from a TIF and then 50% from the federal government. But that was a significant investment for our downtown. What has happened is the occupancy rate of all of our spaces in the downtown has risen. And so that has helped the property values. And so the hotel is another opportunity for us to have another dimension to the downtown. And then we're able to increase the assessed value, which will ultimately help the school district have strong schools and to reduce the tax burden.
You didn't answer her question. She asked you about the past.
I would love to elaborate if you want to ask a follow-up question. The past.
She asked about an address.
But ma'am, if you have a question, please take the microphone and give us your name and address. But in the interim, sir, you're next. You don't, okay. Hold on. If you would like, just. Yeah. Yes.
My name is Pearl Young. I live at Knox and Davis. And I want to know why you didn't answer her question about what happened to the referendum of 2014. You two are talking about future reductions of taxes. Why not answer her question about the referendum that was? Why doesn't she see lower taxes now?
And when you say referendum of 2014, you're talking about the part of the TIF that was released.
So why doesn't she see lower taxes?
So the answer to that, without getting into specific dollars, which I don't have in front of me at this moment, is that the tax burden would be even greater today as we sit here if the TIF would not have done what it did.
Yes, sir.
Hi there, Ken Marley of 4651 Elm Terrace, and I brought a couple of things I'd like to project. Is there a way to switch this up there? Thank you. No, it's not a problem. I like it. Let's take it on top of it. Looks good. Looks good. All right, and I apologize in advance to everyone. I'm going to talk for longer than you want me to and shorter than I want to. Just a quick reminder of some history. This is the Downtown Science and Technology District, TIF, set up in 2006. is operating through 2029. And again, so these are generally 23-year arrangements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So 23 years of whatever EAV growth occurs in this district being, locked away, paying down the $19 million of investment. It's ongoing, and, a lot of the stuff looks great. I love how Skokie Boulevard's looking really nice. It looks great. Fantastic. Thank you for that. This is the West Dempster TIF district. And again, I'm not sure if I got the years right up there, but roughly 2011, 2034. It's going to run through 2034. Red outline being the West Dempster TIF district, and the blue hatch that I've kind of haphazardly drawn over it illustrates which portion of that falls inside of District 69. And that, according to the numbers I found online, was a $29.7 million investment. Also some nice looking stuff happening there. And then, this has already, of course, been shown today, the proposed Oakton Niles district, again, set squarely within District 69, proposed budget of $41.4 million. And I guess my first question would be, we have these two active TIF districts. Do we need to jump into a third one right now? And also understanding that, you guys have said that there is, minimal amount of EAV present within the proposed district. What's the harm of delaying a little bit of time? And I don't even know what length of time I'm proposing to delay it, but what is the harm of delaying it, since we're already getting not much out of it?
No development. That's what happens.
Right.
Do you want the benefit that comes from development? It's the but for. You would be absolutely right. We have done that. Stanford Brown has sat there. J Building has sat there. J Building needs to be developed. I mean, there's just no question about that. The Science Park is 100% leased up. The companies in there are getting renewal of investment. I use LanzaTech as an example. They're not the only one. Some people here may have heard of a guy by the name of Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt. They made a sizable investment in one of the companies in the park not too long ago. These investments are good news, but they also mean these are companies that are ready to expand. If we don't provide space for them, they're going to go elsewhere. And that will be our loss. So the question you present is why now? We have a hotel proposal. We have American Landmarks that is prepared, and we may, and I say may, get a single user that will take the entire space. We will see about that. But the point is that we're in the process of developing Oakton Street. So the alternatives before us is complete the development of the downtown or do nothing and let them languish. We did that. We let the old Desiree property languish. We did, I thought, a very good job of purchasing the property. We bought it at the right time. It was during the recession. And we let it sit there, and we got no development nibbles whatsoever. We then opened it, and 7 different developers came to the village and said, we're interested in 8,000, but we need the village to invest with us. I think what we have to do is look at municipalities today as investors. That's what TIF is. If I said to somebody, I will give you $150 million, will you give me $10 million? I don't think there's a single person in this room who would say no. Of course I wouldn't take that deal. Of course, everybody would take the deal. Well, that's what, in 2005, the village was faced with. Pharmacia was closing. What do you want? We said, we want jobs, and we want green space. Forest City came and said, we will invest, we will demolish buildings, we will rebuild, we will create a modern-day tech park, and we will invest in that. We need you to invest with us, and we did. And today, it's been very successful so far. We still have work to do. The hotel and J Building are part of that vision of the park. In 2005, as we were negotiating with Forest City, we envisioned an international park that would have the need for a hotel. This is 2019. The time now has come when we have that opportunity.
My follow-up commentary, so I was looking through the proposal package, and again, I saw the number 41.4 million of public investment, and I think I crunched the numbers and came up with 106 million of private investment. Does that sound close to accurate? Okay. So we're looking at the public paying for 28% of the development, and I certainly understand the need to attract jobs and the need to attract foot traffic, but I also look at 28% where, to me, it looks like a giveaway of 28% to companies that are going to, yes, bring jobs, but also be a part of our community, and it seems very giving of us to be 28% giving on the investment side. And again, that comes from me, guy off the street. I clearly, am not.
Pretty smart guy off the street.
Hey, you don't got to butter me up. Just answer the question.
No,
28%,
not trying to.
Do we have a sense of what a typical ratio of what a public needs to invest to attract, how many X dollars to get Y dollars back? How do we know if this is a good deal?
Let me elaborate a little bit on the budget. So the budget takes into consideration potentially the next 23 years. We hope to close the TIF much earlier than 23 years. But at this point,
But we're still proposing to spend the same amount of money regardless of when it gets.
But so what we have to do is we have to anticipate what private development will happen in that TIF district. So as we sit here today, we are confident that the hotel is going to happen. Hilton has signed on. There has been a significant financial commitment to secure that brand. And so we know that that developer is ready to move forward with the hotel. In order to keep his costs reasonable, originally the parking was going to be on Oakton Street. It's more efficient to build the parking north of Oakton Terrace, and so the drive aisles and the parking garage will be able to have parking on both the right and the left. And so that decreases the per parking spot cost. And so to go from 35 to 40,000 a spot in a garage to build down to 25,000 makes a huge difference in the financial viability of a project such as this hotel. And so those are the kinds of things that we have worked in partnership with the developer to get his costs down, to make the project financially feasible and involve American Landmark in order to make it beneficial for all. And then they have a parking need. If Building J, when Building J is occupied, there's a need for 450 parking spaces. That's several floors of a parking garage. And so there's, again, $25,000 to $40,000 of cost associated with each of those parking spaces. So our TIF budget at $40 million contemplates the hotel that we know that's going to happen, but it also contemplates the potential of Building J of being fully occupied, the associated parking needs for both of those, which could be 1,050 spaces, plus the roadway improvements of Oakton Terrace, making an east-west corridor parallel to Oakton Street in order to facilitate traffic, ingress and egress from the parking garage, so it doesn't all dump onto one street, but it'll eventually, when it's all built, be able to access 3 different streets to be able to disperse that traffic. But there's a cost associated with that street. Lamont Avenue will be connected from where it is today all the way down to Oakton Street at some point. That means that the parking lot where Annie's is today will be a street, and there's expense associated with that. There is one developer that has expressed interest at some point in maybe doing a mixed-use development where Annie's is and the building next to Annie's. We'd like to retain Walgreens in the downtown, but we don't have any developers that are looking at those parcels yet. As we sit here today, the hotel is the given. Everything else is, the Building J is the next most likely, and the garage, but the other items, we do not have a horizon on when that stuff will happen. But as we put together the proposed TIF, we have to anticipate what could happen, and so that $40 million budget is anticipating 2 or 3 more mixed-use developments between the hotel and the Walgreens parking lot. But as we sit here today, we don't have that planned specifically. But conceptually, there will be significant investment. Across the street is $65 million. So in order to get that $40 million TIF assistance that's necessary, there would be a significant additional private investment. But each project has to stand on its own. We work with the developers, the economic development team works hand in hand with the developers to look at their pro forma to see how we can make it stronger, and if, whether or not it could happen without the TIF assistance. If it can happen without the TIF assistance, then we tell the developer that, and if it needs TIF assistance, then we work to make it viable. But it's a process, and as we sit here today, we're not going to spend $41 million unless we have additional developers come forward with bigger projects or additional projects.
Sure, and that part makes sense. And the part of the proposal that makes the most sense to me is the infrastructure work that needs to be done on that street, relocating the poles, relocating the transformers. That part makes plenty of sense. And I think that was was that $8.5 million, that portion of it? I'd have to look at the numbers again. Oh, $3.5 million. Spend that money right now, please. But I guess my question again: do we have a sense of, again, how much carrot we need to stick out there to get the horse to come along, the private investors? Do we have a sense of what that number is? Is 28% the magic number?
That's high.
Are we getting
4-to-1 ratio is considered high, so 25% of a project, a private project, would be the maximum that we would probably ever consider. And we usually go somewhere within the range of 10 to 15%.
And what we've shown then what we projected is beyond that. It's in the, if 4-to-1's typical, my numbers say we're at 28%, and that concerns me then.
But that's if we spend the entire $40 million. That's a maximum budget. What we're trying to avoid is having to come back and reconvene and do this whole process again in order to increase the budget. So we err on the high side so that we can work within it, and it acts as a benchmark that we don't ever want to get to. So it's, again, our advisors and most of the communities out there that are using TIF, they look at it from the high end. What would we ever want to spend over the 23 years?
What's wrong with setting a lower target and coming back to the community and asking us for additional buy-in? Would that be something that how we could approach this?
The developments always go before the village board with a development agreement if there is TIF assistance, and so there is absolutely additional opportunities for public input. But some of the nuances that I just want to share is Building J, for example. If it's 50-50 lab space and office space, then it's going to be one value. If it's 75% lab space, it increases in value dramatically and the cost of construction changes. And so again, when we're trying to put together these potentially 20-year plans. There's a lot of nuances that just are not known. We are not going to be funding projects at 28% level. That is just not going to happen.
And so what you're telling me is that before any of these developments go through, there's going to be public hearing, there's going to be public input.
That's right. Yes,
Yes.
it's all of these are decisions that the village
Always.
board makes.
I like to hear that.
Always.
Again, I'm going
Good.
on longer than you guys want me to.
Okay, one more question, because there's a lady waiting
You wanna
as
go?
well.
I can.
No, just, you've got the floor, you've got your train of thought.
Right on. All right, this one's a quick hit, so I'm going to do it. It's a multi-part question. Part one, you showed projected EAV, I believe, of 15 million by 2033. Are those constant dollars to a benchmark year, or is that got inflation baked into it? Okay, so that's kind of got some free money in it then, in terms of, you know, the rise in that. Everyone else is going to rise as well by that inflationary amount too. So it's kind of free money.
1%. I mean, we're using a very conservative estimate.
And then my follow-on then is, again, quick hits. I'm going to get through this quick, guys. District 69 budgets. As many of you know, in the last 3 years, the ones culminating June 2017, 2018, 2019, a number of capital projects have been undertaken, expanding Madison School, doing additional work at Edison, all very good stuff. I'm glad it's getting done. I got a 3-year-old kid. He's going to come into some really nice facilities. That's $60 million over the last 3 years. Again, a good investment. Lincoln Junior High School, they've got an oncoming job where, what are we doing? Documents end of this year, phase 1 work beginning 2020, completion 2022. That's $40 million. You know, that's 60 million, that 40 million. We're getting hit by that. And again, I'm glad to put my elbow into it a little bit. I got my kid who's going to be just loving these new schools. But again, it's a matter of these existing TIF districts. They are not participating. They're not, you know, participating today in the way that they will be at the closure when they get released. And again, that just feeds back into my concern about, you know, is right now the right time to act? Is there any chance to delay it? Just general comment. Just a general comment. And then finally, this is a chart of District 69's EAVs feeding into it. Here we are. So the recession happened. Prices dropped. Things were sad. We're coming back out of it. At 2018, the EAV was $431 million. The development that we're talking about, again, I think I saw your chart said $15 million of EAV by 2033. So we will jump this little guy onto here, but then again, that'll be locked away until its 23 years have passed. So I don't know. I don't really have a good statement to add on top of that, other than it seems, again, like I don't know if we need to do this much investment right now. Again, what's the harm in waiting a little bit? That's all I got. And you've given a great answer to this point, again, about the history of why and how we're developing downtown. And I certainly appreciate that. I just personally don't know how I feel, and that's why I'm here.
We appreciate it. And you obviously have done a lot of work, and thank you.
I look forward to coming to further meetings, gentlemen and ladies.
Please, you're welcome always.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Sita Kandik. Do you want me to spell now or later?
If you don't mind.
Or do you want, we can do phonetics for, I need to take up some time. Seetha Kandik. 8636 Monticello, District 65. So sorry, please don't stalk me. Wanted to first express support for the TIF district. Super excited. Longtime resident of Skokie, not consecutively, born here in 1975. Again, giving you way more information than you all need. And then came back 3 years ago. Lived in the city on the north side for some time during the recession. Watched some TIFs in our community be delayed and absorbed and watched our community, including myself as a resident, absorb some of the consequences of those delays, and watched our community suffer. And by community in the city, I'm not talking about Cook County in totality. I'm talking about the neighborhood that I lived in, because the city is divided by neighborhood. I'm excited to see some of the forward thinking expressed here by the different teams. I'm sorry if I'm not using all the correct terminology. Again, I've only been back 3 years. The hotel really does seem to help. I remember when my husband and I were married here, the only place I could put my family up was what was the Best Western by the Don's Fish Market. And there was a tornado that weekend, and they went out of power. So having a modern hotel is pretty exciting, and will be very useful to attract businesses and people of our caliber. So also excited about renewal of a central downtown. I guess to the earlier residents' comment about Old Orchard taking away, witnessed that, but trends are changing as to what residents want, and a centralized urban downtown is part of that new desire, so excited to see that happen as well. I would have prepared numbers. My husband and I both have statistical backgrounds, but I did not know. But again, just wanted to share some of that support and say thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Please.
There's a microphone here somewhere.
Right here. Nope, the other side. No, over.
Oh, over here, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Miles Glasgow. My wife and I and our son moved here 20 years ago. We live in one of the nicest places in Illinois, probably, on Concord Lane. I recommend that you come visit us and see what beauty is. It's got about 40 homes. It's private grass walking lane, and that's enough advertisement. I'm here for a very tiny reason, and that is that one of our neighbors was nearly flooded out over the weekend. And part of the issue here is, although that's a small incident, perhaps instead of the bigger picture, Skokie could market itself much better if a neighbor is not flooded out by a sewer system that's backing up and flooding his own basement. So I came out with a huge broom and shovels and other things in order to clear on Sunday the accumulated water. I brought my basement water vac out, which was, you know, it was a weapon of no comparison to the flood, which was about 4 inches over the curb. There's a regular sewer system there that should address this problem, and the problem is not something that I as a neighbor or my neighbor homeowner could handle. He had 2 children. I was upset because of the mosquitoes that were going to be producing themselves in this ignored, flooded area and the 8200 block of Kenton. And that, so I went to talk to an engineer today about that, and I think we got into a hermeneutics dispute over whether or not it was a well or a sewer system. But the real problem is the service by Skokie teams is really critical. And it's really critical because this is a routine flood in this man's home in my neighborhood that bothers me from the point of view of, do I really need to breed mosquitoes in our neighborhood? Maybe there are softer solutions to some of our problems. Skokie means swamp. How long do we need to keep the swamp as our name? We can call ourselves Oakton. Other places do. It's a softer, hardly any expense except for the letterhead changes. But from a marketing point of view, you don't want the accumulated floods to be chasing people away. You don't want mosquitoes to be chasing people away. And you want some name other than significant swamp to be our name. I know it's a matter of history. How free are we from the entanglements of history? So my request is that whoever is in charge of cleaning the sewers in the 8200 block of Kenton get their act together and either equip us with what we need to eliminate accumulating ponds when the staff and teams are not available. When I walk to the post office, I walk across Skokie Boulevard, and I come over to the medical center or science center or whatever it is, and there's a huge 60-yard field that I walk up. Is that going to be used? My thought is it would be a lot better if you could build or make that available. Who owns it? You know, who owns that huge lot of land?
American Landmarks.
Okay, so why don't they lease it to the village or whatever and get houses built there? It's very close to the post office. It's a nice area. It's close to the jobs that they might want to work at in the science center. But why is it doing nothing?
Because it has a park atmosphere. What we endeavored to do, if you remember when G.D. Searle was there, it was a monolith. There was one entryway and one exit. That was it. And when Forest City and the village negotiated redevelopment of the area, one of the things we told Forest City we wanted was a new tech park, modern, but we wanted a park atmosphere so that the residents of the neighborhood could, like yourself, walk through the park. Our purpose is that this is a technology park. It is not a housing project. And within the park itself, it is not going to become housing. Someday, in the distant future, there may be additional buildings that will be needed for the technology companies. But at the moment, what we are focused on is J Building, which is 8040 Lamont, and the hotel. We are not looking for housing within the park. That is outside the scope. There may be other housing in the area. There's one project that is now advancing on Skokie Boulevard. We had a housing project just down the street on Floral Avenue. All of these are direct results and spin-offs from the park. But it's a technology park, and that is what it is going to remain.
Well, I would just encourage a more free attitude towards almost 100 yards of vacant land that could be used
You're
more
not going to get housing
more
there.
productively.
Miles, you are not going to get housing
Right.
there. No, I mean, there's no developer who's going to build housing in the midst of a tech park. They will build on the periphery, but not within the park.
Some people may love to have their housing very close to their job.
And they do. As a matter of fact, once again, Lanzatech, young man from Lanzatech relocated with his wife to housing within walking distance. And that was the reason.
And they're building new housing just at the end of that 100-yard
Exactly.
field.
You just made my argument for me, Miles. Thank you.
Well, I thought I made my
We've
argument.
known each other
that-
for a few
That
years.
you already have housing coming close to the park.
Let's,
That's my,
it's endless. Miles, get me the name and a phone number for the resident who had the flooding.
I
We'll
tried to
get-
bring him here today, but he was busy with his two
That's
small
okay.
children.
We will get the Public Works Department to take a look at it,
Yes, thank you very much.
of course. Thank you. Miles and I have had this debate for 20 years, so. Proudly, that's right. Yes, hi.
Hi, this is Gail Schechter, 9033B Keating. And I'm sure if you're seeing me, you know I'm going to talk about affordable housing. So a couple of years ago when we were talking about the 8000 North development, you had mentioned, because there were several of us who spoke out, this was in December of 2017, for affordable housing on the site. And even though we were too late, it was mentioned that in future sites that you would consider inclusionary zoning. So I wanted to ask again where the village is at on inclusionary zoning. And then just to mention, and I apologize for, I had another meeting before this, so if you spoke to affordable housing, I missed it. But looking at the packet, it does say here on page 8 of the study, it says here that Downtown 2020 reported that downtown Skokie could absorb 800 to 1,600 additional housing units by 2020. And just wondered if you would make some priority of a mix of incomes. And then the last thing I wanted to show, because it's wonderful that you have this here. This was the study that the village had commissioned. Not sure if you can see it very well, if it's focused. From so this was the Concord group, if you can. So what's telling here, I did the highlighting. So what's telling is that people who earn, households in Skokie who earn $50,000 and under are the most cost burdened. So they're paying between 41 and 49% of their incomes for housing costs. And yet, when you're looking on the bottom, I'm sorry, on this part, oh, thank you for doing this. Just to zoom back out. So this is taking a look at, I guess this is demand or income qualified, but it's only for those earning who could pay $1,300 a month or more. So as you can see, there is this big column here or bar for this higher income, but the second highest that you've got here are people earning or people who could pay under $1,000 a month. So my question that I'm saying out of this is that your own study shows that Skokie residents earning under $50,000 a year still are burdened and have needs, and yet this study is focused on the higher end. And I'm just wondering, is there anything afoot in the TIF district that when there is residential coming in, that there'll be maybe somewhere between 15 and 20% of below market rate housing?
We're not, at the moment, we don't have any housing contemplated within the TIF district. This TIF district is J Building, the hotel, and the park or the parking garage. That's all we're talking about.
And how about the inclusionary zoning ordinance in general, just for any housing development?
We're looking into a variety of ideas. As you're aware, according to the Illinois Housing Development Authority, we have the highest amount of affordable housing in the area. We are approximately 19.5%. Evanston is just a shade under. Niles is about 16%, and that's it. Highland Park is about 9.5%.
Actually, I thought Skokie was at 14.7%.
According to the Illinois Housing Development Authority,
Right, of that.
their report that came out said we're at 19.5%.
Okay, I'll take a look again, because I'm on that board, so I get those figures, but.
Yeah. We're the highest in the area. We're always looking for new ways of providing a variety of housing across the board, including low and moderate income housing, and we are continuing to look at it. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the board? If not,
I think there's one more hand. One more hand.
oh, yes. Oh, sure. Next item is underground utilities.
Yes, item B of my report this evening is regarding the underground utilities placement on Floral Avenue, Sonoma Underground Services Incorporated for $68,775. The Village of Skokie engaged ComEd to design and engineer the relocation of current above-ground utilities to be placed underground to accommodate the new construction and street widening on Floral Avenue. Sonoma Underground Services Incorporated, ComEd's primary source contractor for installing underground utilities, has reviewed the specifications and drawings and has provided a proposal to complete the work in approximately 2 weeks in the amount of $68,775, which is funded through the downtown TIF. I concur with staff's recommendation and respectfully request mayor and board approval.
A motion to concur with the manager's recommendation on item B, underground utilities placement on Floral Avenue, is in order. Trustee Roberts, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Are there any comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts?
Aye.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Ulrich?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Trustee Gray Keeler?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes.
Items C, D, and E were approved as part of tonight's consent agenda. Item F is regarding a request for executive session. Pursuant to Section 2, Paragraph C1 of the State of Illinois Open Meetings Act, a closed session is requested and to adjourn therefrom.
A motion on an executive session is in order. Trustee Gray Keeler, seconded by Trustee Klein. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts?
Aye.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Ulrich?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Trustee Gray Keeler?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Nay. No, just testing to see if people are still awake.
And that completes my report this evening.
Thank you. Next item is report of our corporation counsel, Michael Lorge.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. Good evening, everyone. Items A, B, C, D, and E on my report were approved and adopted at the beginning of tonight's meeting as part of the consent agenda. And that, therefore, would complete my report for tonight.
Thank you. The concluding item this evening is citizen comments. Ms. Pels?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm going to, I think, put up a picture because I think that will help illuminate the issue that I would like to discuss. And I'll see if this does it. So those lovely things up there on my roof are pigeons. So I live on the 8300 block. This will only take 5 minutes or less. I try to condense it. 8300 block of Kenneth for over 15 years. I've been block captain for a neighborhood watch for the past several years. It's a very quiet, pleasant area. It has had no problems except for occasional flooding, street flooding and alley flooding. Okay. Until recently, I've gotten to meet and know most of my neighbors on the block, all very nice neighborly people. We've had some turnover on the block. I don't know all my neighbors, but in the past several years, my next door neighbor to the south has taken up breeding pigeons. They initially told me they were going to build a chicken coop, at which time I referred them to Village Hall to confirm that this was allowed. I knew it was not allowed, but I wanted them to hear it directly from the village. They initially said they were going to they initially told me, they said, it's okay, but a few days later, they informed me they're going to get pigeons instead. I encouraged them to work with the village to get an ordinance in place for chickens, as I was aware that both Evanston and Chicago had ordinances, and I thought that would be a good starting point. But they opted to build a structure onto the back of their house for breeding and housing pigeons. The structure got larger and larger and very unsightly over time, but they assured me the village said it was okay. At one point, a couple of years ago, I saw a rat in my yard, and I called animal control. A very nice employee from animal control named Lillian answered. And informed me that my bird feeder could be contributing to a food source on the ground that as the birds dropped uneaten seeds. She said anywhere rats, squirrels, and birds congregated to eat, rats would follow. So Lillian followed up with a phone call and left me a voicemail message saying that she'd be leaving some information for my neighbor about their pigeon coop. She said, I can't ignore that pigeon coop. I'm going to have to leave them some information. But she said, don't worry. She wouldn't identify that anybody called. And she said she'll just let them know she noticed it while she was in my yard. Well, I'm thinking I would need to call my neighbors and say, I didn't call about your pigeon coop. I called about the rat, but you're going to get some information from the village about your pigeon coop. So they were like, fine. I feel like I'm a good neighbor. I wanted to let them know, hey, you're going to get information. So I wanted them to understand that. They thanked me and said, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. But at that time, the pigeon coop was attached to their house on the southeast side, far away from my yard, and they had not started letting the pigeons go out and fly. My neighbors quickly disassembled the coop after they got the information from Lillian, and I thought the pigeons were gone. It turned out that since it was winter, they moved the pigeons into their garage. And they lived there, and then the next spring, which was last summer, a new detached pigeon coop was constructed close to the alley side of their yard and close to my garage. And soon afterwards, the pigeons were moved out of the garage into this new coop. This was the spring of 2018. As the previous coop had expanded over time, so did this new coop, and it was built up to the fence line at our property boundaries. I started noticing the smell, and I called the village to investigate. Animal control person named Ryan came out to inspect, and he said they had most of their pigeons banded. They were clearly cleaning the coop, and he thought it was okay. He said they had over 40 pigeons. Pardon me, 40. And he said he recommended to them that they reduce the number to like maybe about 20. But he said they can keep pigeons. So I thought, okay, fine. So over the next year, the owner started releasing the birds to let them fly. If the smell wasn't bad enough, now this ever-growing flock of birds was starting to land in my yard, on my garage, all over my house. I called another time at the village, and they said, I called the village another time after they expanded to the fence line. They built the structure all the way to the fence. And I spoke to Terry Oline and asked him if this was allowed. Someone from the village immediately came out, and the neighbor disassembled the structure that was attached to the fence. So there's a setback. I learned there's a 3-foot setback. They could build this thing as long as it was 3 feet away. I asked the owner, my neighbor, keep his birds out of my yard. And initially, he only let them fly when he was there and he was attending them. But if I was home and they were flying into my yard, I would ask him, can you please call your birds back? And so he would get a stick and he'd tap it over the fence and the birds would come back to his yard. But since then, they let the birds fly. They open up the top of the coop and there's this flock of pigeons and they swarm. They go around and around and they land all over. The other day, this is what I saw. And I looked and they're pecking on my roof. And this was only a few of them. They have, I don't know how many they have now. Last count, according to Ryan, was over 40. So anyway, so when I saw this, my neighbor was in the yard and I said, excuse me, can you get your birds off of my roof? And this is a second-story roof. And he said, well, get a stick and tap it on the ground. And I thought, really? Really? You want me to get your birds back to you? And so it really just struck a nerve. And so then he just walked into his house. He just like, that's your problem. So anyway, you can tell this is stressing me out. I'm constantly chasing them out of the yard. It's very hard for me to enjoy sitting on my back porch because the birds fly and I have to get up and clap my hands and say, go home. They fly around. They don't always all come back. They're sitting on my roof. They're pecking on my roof. The neighbors immediately behind their house across the alley say they're going in their yard. Neighbor across the street one morning came out, her car was covered with bird poop. Where could it have come from? So anyway, they ban the birds, they feed them, they house them. To me, they're pets. So they're letting their pets out, and they are not in control of their pets. They're landing on my house, and I'm concerned about destruction and just the appearance. And would somebody want to live in an area where you've got pigeons all over? So anyway, that's my concern. So I think the other issue is, so when I did my addition on my house and did work on my house, I added windows to the south side of my garage so I could have ventilation. Well, when they moved their pigeon coop to the south side of just south of my garage, now I have the windows open for ventilation. What do I get? The smell of bird poop. Sorry. Sorry. I should state it. So anyway, and I looked online, they can transmit diseases. If their feces dry up and they become aerosolized or powdered, they carry disease. So I think animal control probably knows this. But I was told by Ryan that the state allows for keeping of pigeons. However, when I started looking at ordinances online, I noticed the city of Chicago and Evanston both ban them. They are not legal in residential areas. And my concern is Skokie should have some ordinance like that. Our houses are so close together that when these birds fly, they're going to be over my house. They're going to land on my house. It's a good landing spot before they jump down into their own yard, So I would really like to work with the village to develop an ordinance, and whatever other information, you need from me, I'd be willing to share.
Ms. Pelz?
Yes.
Give us your phone number.
Okay.
Just give Ms. Luke.
I'll come
yes.
over and give it to her. Thank you.
And
so anyway,
we'll
Skokie.
look into it.
Thank you. Skokie's a great place to live. I love living there. I like being my neighborhood block captain. I know my neighbors, but this has really caused a problem. Thank you.
Got it. We'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about the problem. It sounds terrible. Editorial comment. I apologize. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the board?
One last quick question.
Please take. We have to do that because we're filming.
Ken Marley again,
For the record.
4651 Elm Terrace. Quick question. There was earlier mention of an agreement between District 69 and the TIF district of some kind of partial release as
Intergovernmental agreement.
Intergovernmental agreement. Is that information going to be made public prior to final vote on it?
Yes.
And do we know when to expect that agreement being public and when to expect
We
the
will
vote?
first. Our anticipation is first meeting in September. We will formally take up and vote on the tax increment financing district, and part of that will be the intergovernmental agreement. It's all public.
Okay.
the business terms of the agreement have been agreed upon. It's now a matter of getting the lawyers involved. So
A draft is ready for review.
he's a little
will that-
sensitive about my comment about lawyers.
And will that information be available on the same website that gives all the
It
other
will.
facts for the, okay.
It will be.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it'll be all voted on publicly, and it'll be all available publicly. You're alone tonight.
It's a big job, but I move we adjourn for executive session.